A nuclear nightmare, potentially, just 50 miles from the nation's capital. An investigation by the Daily Caller finding that the Calvert Cliffs nuclear power plant in Maryland is virtually unguarded, as it turns out. In fact, a reporter and photographer were able to just drive right into the nuclear facility. They shot video of the whole thing. Here's a little piece of that. Terrific, right? Tucker Carlson, editor of the Daily Caller and co-host of Fox and Friends Weekend. Tucker, that's comforting.
Well, it's pretty surprising. We got a tip from someone who is in this business and knows a lot about it, who wound up going out to Calvert Cliffs last month and who told us, boy, this is the softest target I've ever seen. This is really scary. It's 50 miles from Washington, well within the contamination range, and you can get close enough to the reactor to cause damage. And in fact, by the way, I should say we're totally confident that these flaws will be fixed now that it's been on Fox and on the Daily Caller. Otherwise, we wouldn't be publicizing this. And we gave the Nuclear Regulatory Commission a heads up before we did the piece. But while our reporters were there, Alex Pappas in the car, taking notes and everything, this truck, a big civilian truck, just rolls right through the front gates. And anybody watching that has to recall the dozens, if not scores, of horrible acts of terrorism committed with big trucks in the last 20 years. I mean, it could pull up pretty close, or a series of trucks could pull up pretty close to the reactor. What is that?
Yeah, and God forbid something happen at that reactor that would compromise what's in it or in the spent fuel area of that reactor.
Yes.
Just 50 miles away from the nation's capital, hugely populated area, of course. What was the reaction at this facility to this story?
Well, here you had two of our reporters driving around with a video camera, and again, twice. I mean, they came back to the office. I took a look at this and said, there's got to be some kind of fluke. Go back and try it again. They did. Same response. Nobody said word one to them as they drove around videotaping sensitive facilities. I mean, drove all around. And so then our reporter, Alex Pappas, called over to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and said, by the way, you should know that this facility is totally unguarded. You, the Obama administration, have oversight. You're in charge of protecting this stuff, and you're not. And they said to him, well, everything's fine. Nothing to see here. Just go away. Leave us alone. And he said, no, the guardhouse is padlocked. And they said, well, that's fine. He said, well, then why do you have a guardhouse? And they couldn't answer that question. Maybe they will.
Yeah, I mean, is there surveillance cameras that they're watching from some of their location? I mean, clearly, as you point out, it falls under the president's administration and the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, which is directly under the administration, correct? I mean,
it does. And they said, look, there's security that you can't see, okay? Well, here you have an unmarked car with two kind of suspicious people. I mean, they're reporters, so by definition, they look kind of sketchy.
Of course.
And they've got a video camera, and nobody says, and they're driving all around, nobody says anything. But the point is, when my reporters went there last Friday, you could get close enough to do damage. You keep in mind, and I hate even to say this out loud, but it's just true. It needs to be said. The Oklahoma City bombing damaged an area 16 blocks wide. Hundreds of buildings were knocked down. It wasn't just the Murrow building. These bombs, and that was just one Ryder truck, these bombs are incredibly destructive. And so you could really damage, or perhaps destroy, that reactor and the whole area surrounding it, including the nation's capital. It's bizarre.
And as you pointed out in your piece, the 9/11 Commission was particularly concerned about our nation's nuclear facilities, put them on the list of potential soft targets that we need to make sure are very well protected. And with everything that's going on with ISIS and these passports that are out there, you got to be very worried about all of these soft targets. Tucker, thank you very much. Interesting story. We hope somebody gets right on it. Good to have you with us. We'll see you.
Amazing
on the
sight
weekend.
when you roll up to the guard stand and it's just crickets.
Come on in.
Wow.